I'm Warren Smith with World News Group. When evangelical leader Chuck Colson died in early 2012, among the projects in his rich and varied legacy was the Manhattan Declaration, a statement written by Colson, Dr. Robert George, and Dr. Timothy George, with input from more than 100 other Christian leaders. That document laid out the case for the sanctity of life, for traditional marriage, and for religious liberty. What began as a document signed by a few Christian leaders has turned into a movement, and it is now being led by Eric Teetsel, a young man personally selected by Colson just weeks before his death to take the movement forward. Eric Teetsel lives in a row house just across the street from the Supreme Court building on Capitol Hill with his wife Abby, who's also the daughter of Kansas Governor and former Senator Sam Brownback. After spending a few minutes admiring the view of the Capitol dome from his front steps, we sat in his living room and he told me about his upbringing in the Christian home of a career Army officer. His parents were stationed in Italy when it came time for him to choose a college. He said he applied to more than a dozen secular colleges, but only one Christian school, Wheaton. That's where he ended up, and I asked him why.
It dawned on me that my college experience was going to be a formative 4 years. And I got more serious about asking the question, who did I want to be? What kind of person did I want to become as a result of the 4 years that I would spend in school? And the more I thought about that, the clearer it became that a Christian college was going to be a place that would enable me to become more like the sort of person I knew I wanted to be.
When Eric Teetsel graduated, he, like a lot of other new graduates, didn't really know what he wanted to do with his life. It was at this point that one of the many mentors he had gave him some specific advice.
I was also involved in student activities, and I had a mentor named Steve Ivester who pulled me into his office one day and asked me to sit down, and he closed the door, and I thought, oh no, what did I do? He said, Eric, we think you're good at this, and we think you could do this as a living. You should go to graduate school and consider doing the student administration thing as a full-time job. And it felt like an anointing moment where I had a sense of direction.
With his mentor Steve Ivester's encouragement, Eric went to Azusa Pacific University for a graduate degree in college student affairs, and then took a job at Colorado Christian University, where another key mentor came into his life.
In spite of my ignorance, that I went to a place that was being led by Bill Armstrong, the former U.S. Senator from Colorado, who was implementing a vision for Christian higher education that is unique in the world of Christian higher education. The belief that our faith will naturally result in a certain understanding of human nature and the role of government and how we as citizens can best contribute to a thriving society. So I had no idea that was waiting for me when I showed up on campus, but in the 2 years that I was there, I learned a lot about the ideas of limited government, free market economics, and other ideas. It was the first time I read Michael Novak, who said, if we're interested in human thriving, the three pieces that matter are faith and limited government and a free market economy.
From Colorado Christian University, Eric moved to the American Enterprise Institute, a leading conservative think tank, to lead AEI's Values and Capitalism Initiative, which attempted to make plain to college students the moral basis for capitalism and free economies. But when he first heard about the job, he had never even heard of a think tank, much less knew what one did.
I had no idea. And in a couple of months, I learned a little bit about what a think tank was and went through an interview process with the American Enterprise Institute, during which I was very explicit about my lack of qualifications for this kind of thing. I told them, I don't know anything about public policy. I know very little about economics. But if you're looking for someone who knows Christian higher education and can relate to and do programming for evangelical college students, I know that part, and I'm with you ideologically, even if I couldn't articulate the ideas. And they said, great, here, come, work for us.
While at the American Enterprise Institute, Eric Teetsel refined further his conviction that God is sovereign over all areas of life and culture, including economics, and all areas of our individual lives, including our intellectual lives.
The rigorous work of figuring out how your faith applies to truth in every sphere of human society is something that we as Christians should take seriously. The Lord commanded us to love Him with wholeness of self, including our minds. And when we fail to do that, we've failed to obey Him.
One of the more interesting things Eric Teetsel did when he was with the American Enterprise Institute was to take a video camera to Zuccotti Park in New York during the Occupy Wall Street protest. The result was a fascinating look at Occupy Wall Street from a perspective completely overlooked by the mainstream media accounts.
I was talking to a colleague named Greg Lane, who worked with me on this project, and it was Greg who said, well, why don't we just go up there? And I thought, well, this is brilliant. That's exactly what we should do. And we brought copies of a little book that one of our scholars wrote called Boom and Bust, which explains why the financial cycle works the way it does, basically boiling it down to human nature, to fallenness, and the pursuit of greed and the lack of prudence. And we handed them out and just talked to people. And it was fascinating.
One of the things Eric said in the video and subsequently in an article for the journal The City was this provocative statement, that the Occupy protesters are really conservatives. They just don't know it yet.
I got in trouble for saying that. But I think I was right, at least half right. It can be hard to differentiate one from the other, the radicals from the earnest truth seekers. Mm-hmm. And when I said that, I was referring to the folks I talked to, and we were specifically trying to talk to people who seemed genuinely interested in the ideas and in the pursuit of the good. And in conversations with those folks, what I found were people who were interested in values. They were interested in human thriving. They were entrepreneurial. There were all kinds of examples of really neat entrepreneurial things that they had done. Sort of this idea of spontaneous order in community had erupted in Zuccotti Park, where people had different jobs that were aligned with their particular talents and interests. There was a librarian, there was a cook, there was a dishwasher, there was the guy sorting boxes. They were helping one another as they could. They built a system of water filtration out of rocks and styrofoam to clean the dishes. I mean, it was really a neat example of how societies come to be. And the natural progression that occurs with things like specialization, which we know is an economic idea. And then in terms of the ideas, I found people who were looking for options. They believed in human creativity and innovation, and that America would benefit from laboratories of innovation in each state where different ideas were being tested and the best practices could be shared. All towards the end of human prospering. In my mind, those are essential conservative ideas. The issue is no one had ever told them that. I don't think that the conservative movement has viewed itself as an educational movement. We have tended towards data, first and foremost, and warfare, secondly, and tend to deride those who don't understand what we're talking about. Especially youths, rather than to engage in the hard work of educating them and sort of slowly bringing them over towards our side.
It was beginning to be obvious to me that one of the things that distinguished Eric Teetsel was his willingness to submit himself to the leadership of great mentors, men from whom he could learn. Men like his own father, of course, but now including Bill Armstrong, Sam Brownback, and Arthur Brooks. He said working with great leaders helped him understand that they were in many ways just ordinary guys. That was encouraging because it helped him to see that if they were great leaders, perhaps he could be too. But despite their ordinariness, Eric said they were all extraordinary in one particular way.
But what they do have all in common is a deep sense of purpose, animated by their faith. The idea that God has put them on this earth for a reason, and that they have a responsibility, a burden, truly, to steward the gifts that they've been given and the opportunities that they've been given for kingdom purposes. And they take it very seriously. And that's something that I have tried to instill in my own life.
Now Eric has taken over the Manhattan Declaration from Chuck Colson, and in taking over these new duties, his life has in some ways become a metaphor for what the New Christian Voices Project is all about, the passing of the baton to a new generation. I asked Eric if he felt the weight of that responsibility.
It does fill me with a really deep sense of responsibility. The starkness of the reality that I didn't earn this opportunity, that it is bestowed upon me, and it's my responsibility to steward it well, is clear in my life every day. So God, I mean, to think about Chuck Colson, this is a guy that I listened to on the radio all growing up. In college, I taught his worldview stuff at a Christian camp in Colorado, and to meet him, much less to work alongside him, and to have a hand in a project that was near and dear to him at a high level is surreal. But that lesson about humanness and just how normal even someone like Chuck Colson was, he was just a man, and to have the opportunity to carry that purpose into a new generation alongside many other young leaders is awesome, and a testament to the goodness of God that he would give me the opportunity to do that.
More than 500,000 people have signed the Manhattan Declaration to date. Eric Teetsel told me that his goal as the director is to both grow the number of signatures on this important document, but also to mobilize the signers into a grassroots movement that will continue the fight for life, for the family, and for religious liberty, both here and around the world. Reporting for World News Group's New Christian Voices series, I'm Warren Smith.